West Tigers podcast, episode 462. Joel, we were just having a quick chat before we started recording. 462.
Mm.
That's nudging up towards the half of a thousand. What do you call that? Half of a lot, anyway. But
Yeah.
mate, I don't know how many fan-based podcasts there would be out there with close to 500 streams.
Yeah, most people probably, found some sanity and thought, what the hell are we doing this for? And walked away a long time ago. But no, it's a pretty amazing thing. When you think about each one, it's 400 and I think it's about 500 hours in total of audio talking about the West Tigers. And when you think about put it in the context of the years that we've done the West Tigers podcast, most of it's been in a fairly negative space. So I think that deserves a little bit of recognition. But yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? And I mean, hey, let's just keep it going and we'll get to 1,000. I don't know, what we'll be talking about and what the West Tigers will be doing and who will be playing for us and how we'll be going. But 1,000 would be a good number to go for.
Be nice to think in the next 540 odd episodes that maybe there'll be a couple of final series to talk about. In that, it's been a pretty dire 462 episodes, Joel. I mean, I know there's been some fleeting moments, but few and far between, right?
I'd like to get to the semi-finals before 500, which is, yeah, I think,
Yeah, it should
achievable.
happen this year.
Yeah.
The first time that's been a believable thing for quite a while. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly right. But yeah, Josh and Aaron, welcome back, mate. Nice to have you back again on West Tigers podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I don't know, I didn't know if you wanted to invite me back after last week's result and
Mm.
my effort on the pod. So, look, it's nice to be there and remaining positive as we lead into this week.
Well, I don't know if you want to disclose your surname, Aaron, but Joel and I were just speaking before, and maybe you're a bit of a bad omen, and omen is something similar to your surname, correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's Oman, so it's slightly different, but I get the good omen and the bad omen on occasion.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yes,
hopefully you're
let's
not
hope
the
it's a
one.
good omen this week.
Hopefully
Mm.
not the one bringing bad luck because that result was pretty devastating. But if it is your fault, you're not coming back next week.
Yeah, well, as I
Yeah, yeah.
mentioned to you, if things don't turn around this week, I think I'm happy to sit on the bench until things turn around.
We'll see how that goes, but hopefully that doesn't happen. But speaking on the flip side of good judges, Josh, you tipped the Sharks last week, whereas I don't think anyone else did. But well done.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd would have preferred that I was wrong, Nick, to be honest. But yeah. I wasn't shocked at the loss. So.
yeah, I don't think I was more shocked at the result. I think as everyone was. So I don't want to talk too much about that Sharks game, but I
Mm.
know we'll get on to the Melbourne game a little bit later. But yeah, one thing I really want to see this week is a turnaround in attitude. And I'm sure Benji will drill that into the boys this week if he hasn't done already, or I'm sure he has done already. So yeah, obviously, if we can turn that attitude around and do the small things a little bit better, that 5% better, or maybe 10% better, maybe we'll be a shot. But we'll get onto that. Now, boys, just something different because I was pretty flat after that game on Sunday night, as most people probably heard or saw from a previous pod. I thought I'd start out with a new segment called Rate Your Mood out of a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 being very lousy and 10 being very happy. So on Monday, I was probably about a 1, maybe 1.3, not very much higher. I reckon today I'm probably about a 7. So I've had a bit of time to digest the game. Um, Still disappointed, but I've moved on. So Aaron, you're sitting there looking a bit stone-faced, mate. How would you rate your mood on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, look, I was a little bit depressed on Sunday as well, and then I think I acted as probably quite a few people did, acted as your counselor for a couple of days, just making sure you got through, Nick. Look, I was sort of on the up. I played golf today. It wasn't very good golf, so I was sort of back down a little bit, but the injury news hasn't been great in the last couple of days, and the likely long term with AD and Fainu. So that's probably got me a little bit down than where I would have liked to have been. But I'm still very positive that we're finals bound. I'm sticking to that. So I would say I'm sitting around a similar spot, maybe a 6 or 7 like you, Nick.
6 or 7. Josh, where do you sit, mate? Scale of 1 to 10 of happiness.
Well, last week is gone. So on this week, Tigers can still win this week. We've made some great re-signings, which we'll get onto. I think the Jahream Bula news has been followed by what we hoped would happen is the club have gone out and spent that money well. Um, and we've made some changes coming into the weekend, which shows that Benji's really strong on his standards. So 8 out of 10, Nick. 8 out of 10.
That's very positive. I like it. Joel, you're smiling, so I'm guessing you're up towards a 10 somewhere.
Uh, well, I would suggest if I had to come up with the one word to describe the West Tigers last week, I would say roller coaster because it's been an absolute roller coaster. It's been ups and downs and ups and downs. Really incredible when you think about how much has actually happened in the last week. I the thing that's I'm not it's not depressed. I don't get depressed over the football. I get frustrated over the football. And walking out of Shark Park or whatever the hell you want to call it, that place down there at Cronulla on Woolaware on Sunday afternoon, I was just frustrated. I hate like waste. I just felt like we had that opportunity and it was another wasted opportunity, and such an important one. It was always going to be a hard game, but I thought we matched them well, and we just I don't know, lost Dewey, the wheels fell off.
The, no one likes a losing game, but losing games are always hard when they're away. And when they're, I think you live down towards the Shire, Joel, or that direction in Sydney?
Well, Oatley. So some people would say that that's really close to the Shire, and you could throw a stone over it. But we're definitely not in the Shire. No, I made the mistake of going with Sharks members, and they're friends of ours. So it's kind of like, well, you could rib you a little bit, but if you lose by 52-10, I'm frustrated. So it's uh, a different experience to going by yourself. When you've got to smile and say, "Well done, you did well." Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that would have been very frustrating to sit through. But just talking about roller coasters and all the stuff that's been happening at the club through the week, I thought it'd only be fitting to talk about a positive. Jahream Bula commits to the club. That was fantastic news when it came out, as I think we all sort of heard 24 hours before the news broke officially from the club, that was reported that it extended, and then the club came out and with that press conference and on the homepage too, announcing a 4-year contract ending 2030. So fantastic news with Jahream staying on.
Yeah, obviously it's great. I mean, I think, last week we touched on sort of the guys coming off contract. I wasn't sure. I mean, to be honest, the three that have signed so far are probably the three that I was a little bit unsure on. So I thought the May guys, maybe with their attachment to Romy and considering their position, especially not Terrell, sorry, Talon, especially with his sort of coming in fairly new and probably being on a fairly low contract, I thought they might be guys that we would potentially lose. So being able to keep those two and then follow it up with the news on Buller. Look, I thought I really did think the Tigers would take up the 1 year regardless, but to be able to extend it, it's certainly positive. It'd be great to get him back out there because he was in fine form at the start of this year.
Yeah, one thing, Josh, that I was really concerned about, and I'd said to a couple of people that actually listened to this pod, so shout out to Jeremy and Wayne, if I'm sure you're listening, but chatting to those boys and a few others about how much Buller was rumoured to be speaking with Phil Gould and the Bulldogs. Like, I was sure that he was gone. So when he actually came out and was officially announced that he was staying, I was actually blown away. I didn't think it was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I was nervous that he might go. I probably didn't feel as strongly that he was going to leave. I think, he's well settled in here. He's kind of bought into the culture. I think these things just, we're always impatient for them to get done, but actually contracts and, you're setting yourself up for the next 4 or 5 years. And what are you doing with your life? Like you've got family to talk to, those kind of things. These things just, and plus the club has a bunch of these to work through. So, these things take time. Interesting, I heard today he said he'd made his decision to stay with the Tigers a few weeks before Jerome announced, so it was just a matter of dotting the T's and crossing the I's. So yeah,
or
he
dotting the I's and
With the
crossing the
obvious.
T's even. Yeah.
good, you picked it up. You picked it up. It was deliberate. Yeah, so look, he'd made that decision a while ago. That was all sorted. I think, we spoke when the Luai news came up that what the club could do with that money is that it could then be able to re-sign a lot of the key players, and they've re-signed the Mays, they've re-signed Jahream Bula, Creamy Bula, and they've supposedly in the paper today, there's discussions with Latu and Sam, who I'm probably least concerned about. I kind of always, I think we thought they're going to stay. They're really close to Benji. Their brother's already here for till 2029. I think those two will lock in. Sam's, I think, probably the most important. Latu's an interesting one. There's lots of options there, and how much you pay him must be an interesting conversation for the club to have, because do you pay him as a half? Do you pay him as a bench guy? Do you pay him as a lock? Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with his contract. But if they both are locked in, then we're in a really good place going forward for the next 4 or 5 years, and then you can just, place some pieces around that. So I think I said it was an 8 earlier in mood, and I think these re-signings are probably the key reason for that.
Yeah, Joel, I was actually going to get into the Fainus next, but just while we're still talking about Jahream and listening to Josh talk about how it came out and the rumours about, 3 weeks ago, potentially he'd already made up his mind. How do you think it would have gone down? Do you think it would have been better in terms of a fan base to hear the Bula news that he was staying till 2031, or to get the Luai stuff out of the way where we're all depressed and sad and our leader's leaving? Like, how do you think it would have played out if it was the other way around?
I suppose from a public relations view, probably the way it turned out was not ideal because we took that big hit initially, but the club has been able to turn that around fairly quickly, which is pretty good. I don't think with the Luai thing there was ever going to be a way of having one of your captains leave like that and there being any sort of positive out of it. Although we did take a positive spin on it, and I'm not overly disappointed about losing Jahream as much as I like him and I like what he's contributed. I'm not overly fussed about where we're spending that. I'm happy to see that money being spent elsewhere. On Bulla, the thing that I like about it is that it brings stability. And I know that we're going to lose Luai, but it brings as much stability as possible given the circumstances in our spine. And with the view to transitioning Appy over the next couple of years, away from hooker as he gets that little bit older, I think it was vitally important that we kept that vital part of our spine. So it's huge news, I think, for the club. And I think it also, we sometimes put the boot in or can be critical of the club, maybe not so much the club, but the people above. But I mean, Sean Millicamp and the team, I mean, they really deserve a pat on the back to be able to secure a player of Bulla's prestige and potential, who's, he's still hopefully going to keep improving, given the context of PNG coming in and Perth all around the place trying to spend money. It's a fantastic outcome. And if we can get Latu and Samuela signed up, you've really got the core of the team really locked in and really stable, which is what I like and gives us hope for the future. And if we can get Taruva locked in as well, I'd be really, really happy.
Yeah, they're definitely the key components to securing our future, and like you're saying, building that base that we can sort of put players around them, hopefully under the cap, because I think we've spent a bit of money the last few days. But yeah, Bulla's obviously a huge component. As I will come to you, I know you wanted to say something in a sec, but just while we're talking about re-signings, how about what came out a couple of days ago? I think it was a couple of days ago on Taylor and Terrell, where it actually sat down the team in the headquarters at Concord and announced that they were going to PNG. Did you see that footage? I don't know if I don't think there was full footage, but I saw snippets on Instagram the club put out.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually just going to reinforce what Joel was saying. It's such a ray of sunshine to see the club sort of approach these signings the way we have this year compared to years past. I mean, it's all been done very professionally, very quietly. There hasn't been really a lot of releases getting out prior to things like, that we're in negotiations and things like that. So I think it does really show that we're quite strong at that level above. And then I think, the videos that the May boys put out, I think it really does show, like, the obviously the positivity and the jovial nature of the group. They're obviously all mates. They're very tight. They felt like this is something that they could, the prank that they could play. Benji was obviously in on it. And, I mean, it is actually a little bit of a surprise that it was such a flat performance on the weekend because it was so upbeat, that whole sort of thing from their announcement and the way they did it. I thought it was great. And the media really, I think the media really loved it as well, which is another nice thing for the Tigers to get some positive, news reporting on us out there.
I know Terrell and Taylor are, obviously very big on their pods and their vlogs and everything, and I've started watching quite a lot of them, and they're very funny and good value. But they could probably take up a career in acting when they finish playing footy because how they kept straight faces through all of that, I don't know how, especially in front of the entire squad, Josh. Like, that was hilarious. And the look on some of their faces when clearly the gag was out, even the photos that the club was sharing while they were telling this story, like players were looking shocked. I don't know if it was actually true. Chris Harrington walked out. I think there was a photo of him on an Insta post leaving the room with his hands on his head, but it would have been hilarious to be a fly on the wall in that room.
You know what? I think the club's done some sometimes we give them criticism for some of the media stuff they do, but I think some of the stuff this season has been fantastic. And obviously they've worked with the Mays there. I think that's, it's really entertaining and they've really brought in and kind of done a little differently and it captures people's attention. The Bula one where they had the fridge opening and the ice cream taking off the feel good comments, like that stuff's just it's fun and it's a little different and it's a little quirky and it captures people's attention in a positive way. So, yeah, and look, it would have been like that is kind of such a funny prank for them to play. I think that's really entertaining. So, yeah.
Takes a bit of courage too, given the context of everything that's gone down. And you're 100% right that they did very, very well to not smirk. I wouldn't have made it through. Like, there's no way. But I was just going to make the point. Anybody who makes any videos for YouTube or anything like that, don't get too caught up on the numbers because Terrell May eats a chicken schnitzel and 25,000 people watch. So put it in context.
And you know what? I've actually when I played golf with Happy Coruscant, Josh, I don't know if you know that I played golf with Happy Coruscant not too long ago, but I actually said to Happy, I said, would you believe that my 10-year-old and I sat and watched Terrell on YouTube eating a burger? I said it was the most amazing thing. We watched him eat this burger for 10 minutes and he's talking about how good it is and we're watching a close-up of him chewing and he's talking about the texture and then he ate a handful of chips and he's saying, oh, these are the best chips ever. I was watching a live stream of him. He was gaming I think it was last night, and I got involved in the live chat and I said, what did you have for dinner tonight? What did it taste like? And he doesn't read everything out, but he was having a look in between gaming at the chats. And he said, what did I have for dinner? I had steak. He didn't tell me how it tasted, but good on him for interacting with, plebs like myself. So bit of fun. And yeah, honestly, a great character. So glad he's part of our team. Moving off the fun, actually, before I move on, along the lines of what you guys were just saying, I did want to, and it's already been mentioned, but kudos to Sean Mellencamp for the way that he's conducted himself in business over the last week since the Romy news. So obviously that was a huge kick in the guts. Terrell and Taylor tried to go along with it and make us all feel equally devastated that they were leaving, but good on them, they're staying. But yeah, the way the club's dealt with it off the back of bad news, I think it's been really well done, Joel.
And probably pat on the back for not over communicating. Like, things changed when Richo came, and all of a sudden, all those journalist scoops and stories and things that were going on, and stories were flying here, there, and everywhere. And Benny Elias was coming out and saying this and that, and we didn't over communicate. It was just a simple, this is what's going on, and we wish him the best. And look, we'll be making some other announcements in the next coming days. It's just exactly the right amount of communication coming out of Concord, which is great. A big change.
Yeah, huge change. Really good. So enough of the happy, glossy stuff. I now want to get buried into some sad stuff. I want to talk about the injury crisis, which we've already touched on a little bit. But out of that game, AD against the Sharks, AD with his shoulder, that was horrible in the act of scoring a try. Dislocated his shoulder. Unfortunately, they were zoomed in when the trainer came in or the doctor came and popped it back in. You could see that was pretty violent when it went back in, but been told he's out for 6 weeks. Samuel Fainu, as we've already mentioned, 12 weeks is massive. The initial assessment was, I think, around 6 weeks, but for that to be double, that's huge. Huge out, Aaron. They're two big losses on their own, AD and Samuel.
Yeah, I mean that's probably why I felt a little bit down as the week went on, and for the time period that they're out. I mean, the initial reports were AD for Dewey for 6, but to lose Sammy for 12, it's yeah, very disappointing. So look, hopefully he can get back a little bit earlier. That I guess the big query or question and concern, and it was the same week just gone, and it's the same with the squad that we've picked, is who replaces him, I guess, in there, and who does the job for us there. So he has been so good for us this year. So it's going to be a big, it's big shoes to fill for whoever ends up in there.
Yeah, massive. I think his brother Sione's in the back row this week, and we'll get to the Melbourne game shortly. But yeah, Josh, I was looking 12 weeks. I think if my calculations are right, and it's only addition, so it's not too hard. Round 21 against the Raiders in Canberra, I think, is when he's due back. So that's going to be a big game, and hopefully we're still around that sort of 50-50 win loss rate by then.
Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, he was playing so well. He's probably been, one of the form back rows of the comp. In my opinion, he probably should have been in the Origin conversation. He probably was a bit, but probably should have been in there more. Yeah, that's a horrible loss for him for the season. It's a hard loss for us. I think there's a few contenders for his spot. I mean, because it's a long time till he's back. Someone has to kind of earn their spot and lock in there. But yeah, I think that's a real shame. It's a real concern for us on that edge. And as much as his attacking genius is missed with some of those offloads and that kind of thing, it's those effort areas and defense that he really brings. Like his defense on that side in that combination there, really important. And he's always the first guy down on kick chases. When we need a big moment, he's been the guy coming up with the big moment. So, yeah, he's going to be hard to replace. Not just this weekend or the next couple of weeks, but over 12 weeks is a very long time. I mean, luckily we've got a bye in there, and we've got Origin in there. It'll kind of it won't maybe feel quite as long, but yeah, it's still going to be a challenge.
Yeah, such a shame, Joel, because Samuel is so young, but his name's been thrown around in Origin conversations.
Mm.
Even AD, like we joked last year when AD was thrown into the Blues squad, when they're out at the Blue Mountains prior to it might have been game one. We joked that what was Dewey doing in Origin camp, but he's genuinely been talked about as a potential to even start or maybe a bench spot this year. But for AD and Samuel to go down with long-term injuries, it's really a kick in the guts for them both, isn't it?
It is. I would say, though, if we're going to be wildly optimistic, at least it wasn't a knee for Adam Dewey. Like,
Yep.
at least it's at the other end of his body, which is at least a good thing, because every time he gets tackled, I'm thinking to myself, oh, geez. It's like when Scott Prince played for us. It was always, oh, God, he's going to break his leg. So that's a blessing, I guess, in itself. And he's got he does seem to recover well, and he obviously is a good trainer, and he looks after himself really well. So you never know, he might come back a little bit earlier. Yeah, it's a shame for Samuelo playing the best football of his career. I look again. We could be a little bit more optimistic and say, well, he will be back this year. Maybe he comes back at a time where we need his injection, that late surge, and he'll be fresh to go. But what we've got to do is we've got to make sure that there's no excuses, and it is the next man up. And the next man up, which is his brother this week, gets the job done as much as he can. They're big shoes to fill. They're not the same player, but the club has a history of allowing setbacks to derail us way too easily, and we need to show more resilience. And this is an opportunity, because this next week is set up in such a way that we've read this script before. And what I think a lot of West Tigers fans reading stuff on the socials and that a lot of people are braced for a real downturn in form and a slide down the ladder. But this is the chance to be different, guys. This is a chance to reset the way this club works. And maybe all the work that's been put in over the last couple of years is all about this moment, where instead of going that way, we actually maintain the good form, and we could maintain the good results that we've had so far this year. It's a huge test for club, coach, and players.
Completely agree. And I do have that as a talking point coming up about a potential slide, and also the importance of this game against the Storm. I think it's huge this weekend.
Mm.
But just quickly, while we're on injuries, Jahream Bula, left shoulder, 5 weeks. I assume that starts from when he injured his shoulder. Is he back after the bye? Is that when he's due back?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
He's due back the week after the bye, yeah.
And then Makasini was always a little bit iffy. I wasn't sure when he's back, but I've seen 3 weeks. So I'm not sure when that 3 weeks ends, but hopefully that's very soon because I'd love to see him back in the NRL team.
Which I think is a foot injury as well, from memory.
Yeah.
It's another
Yeah.
foot injury. Yeah,
Mm,
got a couple of feet and a couple of shoulder injuries,
mm,
so
mm.
seems to be fairly consistent there. But that's enough of injury talk. I did find something else I wanted to mention today when I was digging through West Tigers news on the internet. I'm calling this 50 is the new 30 because our old mate Blake Austin, I haven't listened to the podcast, but I did see it in a news story, was on the Footy IQ podcast. And he puts a 2026 type spin on our result against the Sharks, where basically with the speed of the game and the six agains and all the ruck infringements, etc., that being beaten by 50 is kind of considered what a 30-point loss would have been not too long ago. So, what do you think about that? Like, maybe we're just trying to cover up a horrible loss or make an excuse for it or make it a little bit softer, but he's probably got a point.
Yeah, look, I've heard from a few people, and I was actually chatting to someone about it today, that the old sort of analogy that if you have 50, you concede 50, you won't win the competition is probably going to get broken at some stage in the near future because of the way the game is sort of evolving with the speed and the number of points scored, etc. The only thing about this, and this is something, and I was again talking to someone about on the weekend, is I do agree with that in most part, except when you look at who's conceded 50 other than us this year. I mean, Dragons last, Para twice, bottom, 3 or 4, Storm, who aren't having a great year down the bottom, Titans, fourth last, I think, and the other team's the Dolphins, who are touch and go the way things are going of making the 8. So we're not real. I mean, without getting too negative, we're not in good company with the other 4 sides as things stand. I do agree with the other 5 sides. I do agree that it will. I do think it is evolving, and it probably will be a year when that changes. I noticed that there is a market up now that you can back a side to concede 50 and win the grand final for $13 or $14 or something like that. So obviously there's a bit of talk around about the fact that it is changing, it is evolving.
Um, I mean, we saw it against the Sharks. As soon as you start having injuries, especially key players, momentum can swing very quickly. And I think the Sharks just sensed blood, didn't they, Joel? They sort of got a sniff that we were in trouble. We were under strength from the start anyway. They targeted our weakness down the right side and they just piled on the points.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take anything away from Cronulla. I know they started the year poorly, but most people would have had them in around the top 4, top 8, at least top 8. They're perennial top 8 finishers, and they were at full strength. But I
Yeah.
mean, the thing you've got to factor in is I think if you look most of the time at teams that come out and they lose by 50, it's just a poor team performance. But and I don't mean to rub it in, but we had a guy on the wing who is very raw, had a very, very bad afternoon, contributed a lot to that score line, and if he holds on to 2 or 3 of those balls, it probably doesn't end up that way. And Stafford Toa, I mean, maybe his shoulder is not right, maybe there's something going on with him. I don't know, but he had a really, really poor afternoon in defence. And really, if you take those 2 out, then I don't think that's what that result is. I don't know if we'd necessarily win. I think we lacked cohesion in attack, and obviously you lose your halfback after 20 minutes, there's going to be some knock-on effects. But yeah, I don't think it necessarily goes in with that sample of teams that have turned up with and just not been on the day.
No, I agree with that. Now, I would like to bring back a segment, Joel, that's we haven't done for a little while, and thank you for nudging me today.
Mm.
And Josh, I'm going to give you the first go at this. We're playing buy, sell, hold. So our regular listeners would have a full awareness of what this is all about. But Spencer Lenu's been in the news a little bit. Our old friend over at the Roosters prop, got a Panthers background and has played with quite a few of our players. And there's been some stories in the news that the Roosters want to let him go ASAP. So my first question, Josh, Spencer Lenu unwanted by the Roosters. Should West Tigers make a move to sign him immediately? Buy, sell, or hold?
Uh, I'd have to. I'm not going to sit on the fence. I'd have to sell that only because um, I just think it's not a position we're in need of. There actually are some positions that I think we're in need of, like a hooker to kind of back up Appy and maybe a right centre. But we've got Terrell, we've got Pole, we've got Sione Fainu, although he has moved to the back row, so perhaps that's maybe that's an inkling. We've got Royce Hunt, and we've got Bunty coming in this week. Mav Guy has been playing prop and is onto the bench this week. Alex Seyfarth can play prop. Um, we have quite a lot of props, and look, the only way I'd see it is, he's too similar to Royce for what he brings to a team. So, if Royce was going next year, which I don't think he is, and I wouldn't like him to be, then maybe you could bring him across. But for the money you have to pay him, unless the Roosters are playing most of the freight, and there's again a bunch of our cap taken up by that. And yes, he's good mates with Jahream, but Jahream's leaving too. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, I'm a sell for that one.
Yeah, as there's a lot of rumors, I hear people talking on social media that Spencer wants to play with Jerome and he might likely end up at PNG for 2028. Um, I just think the timing's off for us. Like I would actually love to have Spencer Leniu in our side. A couple of years ago, I thought he was probably the best prop in the comp and one of the most feared as well, especially when he was doing damage in Origin. I actually got a shock today when I looked up his profile. He's only 25. Actually would have thought he'd be 27. He just feels like he's been around for that long. I rate him.
Yeah, look, I agree that I rate him. I mean, look, he's been great for New South Wales. He's aggressive. He can turn a game with some of those impactful runs and defensively. He's very hard in defence. I tend to agree with Josh. The price point and the timing and things like that probably don't align, and in all most likely he probably will end up in somewhere like PNG for the money and that kind of thing. I think. I probably am sitting on the fence a little bit in terms of giving you a buy, sell, or hold, only because if the deal was right. Look, we got Terrell. He's been fantastic, unwanted at the Roosters. He's been great for us. So it could be a similar sort of scenario. Comes in, really enjoys the culture that the Tigers are building and that kind of thing, and he's fantastic for us. So because of that, I'm going to hold.
Yeah, Joel, it's been said, but what's your take? Buy or hold?
I think we've had a sell and a hold, so I'm going to go buy, and that's only because, like, if you ever ask me, do I want a quality prop, I'm never going to say no. And he is a fantastic player, and I think that sometimes the boys from the western suburbs go over to the Roosters, and it looks all shiny and it looks fantastic, and yeah, we can go down to Bondi and this, that, and the other. But I think just culturally, there's just sometimes they're a square peg in a round hole. Spencer's better than what he's given the Roosters over the last 12 months. Now, I agree with the boys in saying I don't exactly know where he fits. But, if the Roosters are chipping in, I'd rather have him than let someone else have him.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly. I'm kind of with Josh, though. I think we should probably focus on other areas of the team. I know we're struggling a little bit with fullback, probably a right centre as well, and hooker. Maybe a bit more depth there, or another option apart from Tristan Hope. But we'll get to that as well. But anyway, let's move on to the second one. So I'll start with you, Josh. You're sitting there quietly, mate. Api Coruscant will be on the Blues bench for game one. Buy, sell, or hold?
Oh, I think if you'd asked me before his suspension, it was an absolute buy. I think that a little bit of the challenge is he wouldn't have a game before the Origin team. A little selfishly, I don't really want him on the Origin bench because he's already out for 3 games. I don't want him missing a few more. Uh, but I think it's a chance. I mean, it depends on injuries, the kind of other guys competing there. But while he hasn't been playing, I don't think, if you're daily, you're like, well, it's not like I don't know what app he'll bring. And actually, 3 weeks off may actually be better for him.
Mm.
Kind of coming into Origin, he's fresh. He would have been trained hard. It's not coming off an injury either, so he would have been in good condition. And he can come straight in there if named. Look, it'd be interesting. I think he probably will be. I'm going to buy that. Buy that.
Yeah, this is why I threw it in too, because he's on a suspension break leading up to that Origin period. So it's an interesting question. Joel, what's your take? Buy, sell, or hold?
No,
Happy Origin.
I'm going to sell it. Nick, you've got about as much chance of playing for New South Wales as Api Coruscant this year, I think. Politics
Thank you.
politics in NRL. He's got the line drawn through him for a couple of reasons. One, too creative, and two, too much happy, which we all love. But some people would say he's not built for Origin. And B, if you remember back what happened in camp a few years ago, I think he's the line's been drawn through his name.
You might be right. I know that he does want to play because he told me when I played golf with him. What do
Yeah.
you think, mate? Do you think Uppy will be there? It's
No,
tough.
so I'm a sell as well. I don't think he'll be there. I don't think he'll be there. The main reason I think he won't be there is because of the fact that he's going to miss 5 weeks leading in. I just don't think they'll take the risk on him. But I think that the back end of last year, Brayley was probably the form hooker in the competition. Played reasonably well against us. Sharks are going quite well. I think he'll be one of them, and I think they'll take the incumbent. So I think Reece will be there as probably he'll probably start. I I don't think they'll necessarily use the backup hooker unless there's an injury. I'm not sure Laurie will be swapping those, but with a 6-man bench, I would imagine he'll take an extra hooker, and I think it'll be those two.
Yeah, I think for Uppy's sake, I know he'd love to play, but I think it's a real shame that if he can't get another crack at the Blues, to be honest. I think what he could add, even off the bench in shorter spurts, his creativity could, change a match, but he's getting on, and yeah, it's probably unfortunate timing with his suspension, which shouldn't have happened, but it is what it is. But I guess we'll wait and see. As you just finished off there, but I'll throw the last one to you. Finishing ninth this season is a pass. Buy, sell, or hold.
That's a sell as well. I'm all in now. We're top 8 this year. Otherwise, it's a failure as far as I'm concerned. Look, if you asked me before the year, I probably would have been sitting on the fence. But I've seen enough in the first few weeks that it would be a big turnaround in form. I don't know, Joel, what is it? 8 of 16 now? Is that the number we're at? Look, I think if we can't win 50% of the games coming in, I think we got Dragons twice, Titans once or twice, Dogs a couple of times. I mean, the way we were playing at the start of the year, yes, injuries, etc., can curtail things, but we should be making the 8 to be a success this year or a pass mark.
I have a feeling Josh is the glass half empty here. Josh, I reckon you're going to sell this one. Sorry, I reckon you'll buy it. I think you'll be happy with ninth. Am I right?
I'm going to hold actually, Nick. I don't like to hold, but I'm going to hold until Appy gets back. I don't know what this injury-riddled team looks like. Like at the moment, I think it's a real challenge without Appy. But I think when he gets back, no matter the other injuries, I think we'll get better. So I think I'm going to hold until Appy comes back and see what happens in the Dogs and Panthers games after the bye. Those are the two that to me are the real season-defining matches. We don't have to win both of them, but with Appy back, but with still some guys kind of out for a bit longer, those are the season-defining games for me. And so I'm going to hold until Appy comes back on that.
Yeah, Joel, I'm hoping that this mid-season is going to be our. I know we tend to have a mid-season slump every year, but maybe it's forced with the injuries and the reshuffles. But ninth place, mate. Buy, sell, hold.
KC the way, isn't there? But I don't think ninth is ever a success. I don't think realistically. I mean, unless you've had 6 players walk out of the club or something, I don't think there's any excuse really. And given where we're at this point on the table, at this point of the year, with a 50% win ratio required, I don't think that would be in any way, shape, or form a success. And I think in regards to the mid-season slump, this week, these next couple of weeks are going to make us or break us. And hey, let's go with that roller coaster theme. We up, down, up, down. Well, we had down at Cronulla, so maybe up at Melbourne.
Yeah, it's not up Cronulla. It's up in downtown Melbourne.
Stuff
So
Cronulla. What does
hopefully we can-
Cronulla contribute to the game of rugby league?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah,
They're
not
over
much.
there, annexed by the Dragons on this little peninsula. They've got a hopeless home ground. Anyway, doesn't matter.
down in your backyard next to Adeley. But yeah, good stuff.
Across the water.
Before we get to match preview, just a quick look at the ladder, and I did title this segment "Tigers on the Slide." Now, I know I have been looking at the ladder the last few weeks, and I've been nervous about this period leading up to Origin, etc. And it's obviously now made worse with all of our injuries. Tigers are now down to 5th, which is if you had said to me 10 weeks ago at this point in the season you're going to be fifth, we'd all take it. We'd all be jumping up and down. Melbourne, unbelievably 16th, second last. Before we get into the Melbourne part, the thing that worries me, I don't want, and we can't afford any more 50-point scores against us because the blowout for the differential could be costly towards the end of the season. That worries me a bit. As we start to look towards the game against Melbourne, and I know you've already spoken about odds earlier, and I know you're a betting man. And I did have a quick look at the odds because I knew you were coming on. Would you believe the 16th place Melbourne Storm are currently $1.50 favourites over the 5th place West Tigers, who are currently paying $2.53? Which way are you throwing your money?
Yeah, I was surprised. Gamble responsibly, Nicholas. I actually thought I think I messaged you on Sunday pretty much straight after the game, and you were sort of like, Storm will be favourites, Storm are beating us, etc. And I said, don't be silly. We'll be faves going down there. I was a little bit surprised. Obviously, the two injuries we took out of that game have probably contributed to it a little bit. I don't know. I don't know about you guys. I've tipped the Storm in the tipping comp the last 3 or 4 weeks, thinking things are going to turn, even though they haven't been playing that well. I'm still nervous that things are going to turn, and they're going to turn at some point. So I'm sure we'll cover it in the game, but there are some ins for them. Hopefully they don't turn this week. Look, I'm not worried about the ladder at this point. I think it's too congested. I think the fact that we're 5 wins, 3 losses is a big positive. We're beyond that 50-50 scenario which is all we need from here on in to be playing top 8. The for and against is something for me. We've done really well. We were 80 plus differential. I think we're back to about 40 now. So that'll be one thing for me. Like you said, we just got to be competitive in these sort of games. If we do go down, it needs to be like the games against Brisbane and Souths. Needs to be tight.
I agree. And a couple of nights ago, Josh actually said he'd be happy with a 10-point loss against Melbourne. So, Josh, you've had a couple extra nights to sleep on that. Are you still going to admit that you'd be happy with a 10-point loss this week?
Look, I was checking out the Storm team. It's virtually full strength. They're at home. While they've lost a bunch of games this year, they did put 50 on Para at home to start the year. Obviously, they've had some challenges down there. It's also a day game. The Storm historically are a better team during the day. I mean, they're a good team anytime. And look, but all those factors still, if it was the side that we were running out 2 weeks ago, I would have been picking the Tigers to win and win convincingly. The side we're running out this weekend, I think, looks better than it did last weekend. But yeah, I still think a 10-point win to the Storm is probably likely, and I still think I'd be like and I think I mentioned this the other day, and I looked at some of the other teams, and I thought, well, if I took out their fullback and I took out their halfback and I took out their hooker and I took out their best back rower, and then said, would they win? I couldn't say that about any of the teams that I was looking. Even maybe the Broncos, because they've been doing well, but I think a lot of that's been on the back of Adam Reynolds, who is their halfback. So I'm not sure I could look at any team and tip them in that circumstance. So yeah, if we went down there and were competitive and lost by around 10, I think I'd be happy with that result, and say that's a good sign for the depth we have. And a good sign of the depth we have. There are a lot of reasons, and we're still more than a 50% win record, and yeah, I could be happy with that. And I think that's where it's going to land. I think the Storm will win, but I expect and hope for an improved performance by the team this weekend.
Well, if you think I was depressed on our previous pod, if we lose to the Storm on Mother's Day, you watch and see how depressed I'm going to be on Sunday night. I hope I have a lovely day with my wife and with my mother and mother-in-law, because if we lose, it's going to be devastating, and I will be looking for a bridge that Joel was talking about the other night on the pod to maybe jump off. No, it won't be that bad, but look, we're about to get into the match preview, but I don't want to lose, because if we lose, honestly, you know what's going to happen the following week against Manly? Brooksy's going to score about 5 tries. He's going to win man of the match, and we're going to lose by 50, maybe 60.
That's impossible.
Pessimistic Nick is coming out. But Joel, I did have a look at it's well documented, right? Melbourne's lost seven in a row, which I believe is a club record.
Mm.
And as mentioned before, right, they beat the Eels 52-4 in round one and backed that up with a 46-20 win over the Dragons in round two. Two pretty comprehensive wins.
Yeah, yeah.
And everyone's talking about the team that played in the grand final last year, and here they go again. And then they lost to the Broncos, Cowboys, Panthers, Warriors, Raiders, Rabbits, Dolphins, with a couple of really big losses in
Mm.
amongst those seven.
Mm.
It's a very different Melbourne side this year, and we don't know what we're going to get, but Jahream Hughes is back.
Hughes and Munster and Grant, it's always hard to sort of go against a team that's got those three in it. They'll probably be motivated. Like, I mean, I hate to be pessimistic, but this you can see the script is written for Melbourne to bounce back and go on a run and do it for Craig Bellamy. Like it's kind of, oh, we've had the worst start to the year, but we're going on this crazy run towards the end of the year. The class is still there. The muscle memory of winning is still there. But hey, things eventually change. Some people would say Bellamy stayed too long. Maybe the club they're just sort of out of ideas and there's stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't know. The bigger the balloon, the bigger the eventual pop, and it can't go on forever. So maybe the tide is starting to turn for Melbourne. Going right back to the beginning of the pod, Nick, like how many episodes of the West Tigers podcast would it take before we get to a 50-50 win ratio with the Storm? Because we've played 39 games. They've won 27 and we've only won 12. So it could take 100 years for it to get back to 50-50. But yeah, it's more than two-thirds of all the games they've won. They've had it over us, and a real sliding doors moment, I think, for West Tigers when we didn't get Bellamy as coach back in the day.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think by the time we get to a 50-50 win ratio, our podcast will probably be hosted by our children or maybe our
Yeah.
children's children. And I'll be well and truly dead by then. But I hope it's still going. So anyway, West Tigers podcast, long
Yeah,
live.
that might even be next week if the Storm beat us.
I hope not. I hope not. But Josh, there's some really interesting changes in the teams this week, right? And there's some interesting sort of placements in some of the positions. But the Storm have got a couple of names that you just know they're going to be fired up against their old club. Old Stefano and Sean Bloor. Two big forwards who will be going to want to rip in against the West Tigers.
Well, three forwards. Harry Grant, obviously,
And
also
Harry.
is an ex-Tigers star. Made his debut for the club.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not so worried about Stefano. I think he's been rubbish this year, and there was all this talk when he went to Melbourne that he was going to become this star prop. I think he was okay last year, but I didn't think he did anything much different to what he was doing with us, to be honest. And this year he's been fairly well atrocious. So, I'm not expecting a big game from him. I actually think the forwards is where we've got the advantage, and I think that's if Hope, who I think played all right last week, and was forced to play 80 minutes. I think if he can bring our boys on the ball, I think we've got that. Sean Bloor's been out of the team most of the year, and I think if they weren't having such a wretched run, he probably wasn't coming back, despite the fact they started the year down a back rower. So, and also he's off contract, and there hasn't been any look of him being re-signed down in Melbourne. So I think he's probably a little bit on the nose, but they just don't have anyone else to play at the moment down there. So those ex-Tigers are playing much like they did when they were playing for the Tigers, and fairly average. So I think our forwards will get over the top of them. I think that's not really my concern. But we have some. Well, my main concern actually is in the forwards. It is that hooker role, and as I said, it's no really a criticism of Tristan Hope. It's a compliment to Happy Coruscant because he does so many amazing things that, I can. And I we chatted on the chat about bringing in an extra hooker, and there's some names, but actually you think all of them and you go, well, it doesn't really matter who you bring in as a backup. They're still not happy. Like
Mm.
that's other
Yeah.
positions we're reasonably covered. I mean, it's hard when you lose four or five of them at once, but I think the halves with Jock and Jerome is fairly solid once that they build some combination. I think the movement of Taruva back to the wing, Patrick Herbert into the centers gives it a much more solid look on those edges and guys who have had great seasons. For no valid reason, I have faith in Heath Mason at fullback. I never really had faith in him as a 5'8" or a centre, and I worry about him under the high ball, but I think he'll go all right. The one bit where I think we've got a real advantage over the Storm, though, is our bench. I
Mm,
think our bench
100%.
forwards look much better than the Storm bench forwards. So,
Mm.
um, if we can hold them for the first 2025, even then I think we've got to get back to those first 6 or 7 weeks where that period from 30 minutes to 50 minutes when
Hmm.
Royce comes on. This time it'll be Royce and Bunty coming on the field. If we can hold them till then, I reckon those two might blow them away in the middle. That is my if it all goes well, that's when it'll go well.
Yeah, I think we've got to get back to dominating the middle and winning the forward battle because I think we lost that last week against the Sharks, and that was very different to what we've got used to over the first 7 or 8 weeks. So yeah, hopefully we can improve there. But as I'm actually really happy that Taruva's back on the wing. It's
Great.
nothing against him being a fullback, but I think he's such a classy winger and finisher. And the way that he talks, I actually think that we might get more value out of him from barking orders from the wing inwards because that right edge was terribly flaky against the Sharks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think it's underrated sort of some of his defensive reads even as a winger.
Mm.
So which we've been lacking, you know. So and you know, I was a huge fan of what Paddy Herbert did early in the year. I was out at Campbelltown for that game. I thought he was fantastic. I actually thought he was very good in the New South Wales Cup game for Wests against Para. And in that same game, Toa played, and I didn't think he was great. And yet they sort of moved Herbert on for Toa. So I'm actually really happy that he's back in, and I hope he offers what he has been had been offering because he was strong, good ball carries, some really good defensive work. I do think that side looks a lot stronger. I'm hoping the fact that you know, Jock's named. He knows he's there. It's not like getting thrown in 10, 15 minutes in, no warning. I know these guys are professionals and it shouldn't affect them, but maybe just all those changes on that side last week. I mean, it's basically four or three of the four players in those positions were new to the week before. I think that probably did lead to some of the dramas in terms of what we saw. So I'm hoping that, yeah, like, you know, our defense had been really, really good. So I'm hoping we get back to that this week. Absolutely. I'm a little bit the same. I'm worried about their spine. I mean, their fullback Fonlongo, look, he's an excitement machine, but I think he does have some errors in him, and he's only little. So he's quick, you know, he could put some pressure on our second rowers and things like that when he loops. So that'll be a test for our edge. But outside of that, obviously they're 6, 7, 9. If they come and play, I mean, there's some of the best players in the competition in those positions. So we just got to hope that the script isn't written and it's not a fairy tale for Melbourne, and you know, they get back to sort of playing roughly the way they have been playing, and we get back to the way we were bar last week.
Yeah, they're a bit of a sleeping giant down in 16th, but hopefully they don't wake up this week, although I am worried.
Mm.
Yeah, Kai Pearce-Paul's a massive inclusion. Joel back on that right edge, I think. I don't know what. Well, I know Tony Sooker's been named in reserve grade, so
Mm.
he's been completely demoted. So maybe Benji saw something watching the replay with Sooker on that right edge. I don't know if he specifically was an issue. I thought the players around him all had problems, but he seems to be made the I won't call him a scapegoat, but the unfortunate one to be removed. He was obviously going to be swapped out for Kai Pearce-Paul coming back in, but I
Yeah.
guess it's a shame for Sooker.
Well, I think the thing is that there was the direct availability of the guy that he'd replaced. So I can see the logic of not moving him over to the left side. I believe he is a left side player, preferably. I think from memory he's played on the left more than the right. I could be wrong, but I think that's what my recollection is. But yeah, I think I've got written here KPP returning. I think is a real positive for us. But I also think Sione, as well, as much as he's not as sharp from an offensive position as his brother. At least we know with him defensively, he's done a good job even on that left side in the back row. So you know, I don't think in terms of defence, I don't think we've lost a lot there. I think he'll do well. What I like about the bench, as Josh was saying, not just impact, but a lot more experience than Melbourne as well. There's a
Mm.
fair bit of experience there. Really glad to see Bunty get his debut, and him and Hunt. Hunt had a really unfortunate game last week against the Sharks, so I think he'll want to be better and make amends for that. So those two could offer us some real punch off the bench. Seyfarth good if we need someone to tidy up around the middle. But what I like about that bench is Latu. I think Latu's got to play. I think last week
100%.
against Cronulla, we needed someone to straighten us up, and I think we missed that. And I think this is the kind of game that's going to suit Latu Fainu, and I think he'll be in for a good game.
I want to see more of Latu.
Mm.
Josh, it's got to be this week. I think exactly what Joel said. I love what he brings with his running game. He's very aggressive and he's a good defender too. So
Mm.
I don't know how they're going to use him. I don't know if he'll. I assume he's going to swap out for Tristan Hope a little bit because Hope can't play 80 again.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's really interesting. Like mo most weeks, we've had Madden and Latu, or Hope and Latu, or Hope and Madden. We've had two of those kind of players who can slot into that hooking role um, on the bench. Although sometimes, even for Appy, we've seen Sione play the last kind of 10 minutes,
Mm.
and it's there. So it'd be interesting to see what he does. It'd be great to see Latu get on. I actually would like to see him, like you, come on in that hooker role for some of it, even if he kind of comes on for 15 minutes for Hope there, and then maybe stays on and
Mm.
moves into more of that kind of lock ball playing role. I mean, he's got good defense. So I think he could defend in the middle. I'm just not sure about his passing off the ground, but it's not like Hope is brilliant there. It's not like you're comparing to Appy. So, yeah, I agree. I think we've got to get Latu on at some stage. Gives Hope a rest. He's direct. It changes our kind of look there. And I think against the Storm, and with Harry Grant kind of on the other side, it kind of will at least change it up there and change the game. But his defense in the middle, I mean, sometimes I get nervous about his tackling technique when he
Mm.
throws those guys over his shoulder, um, but he can tackle. He's strong and he's can really put a hit on. So yeah, love to see him. I'm also excited about Mav Gaia on the bench. His first game of the season. Um, perhaps the last one before he goes to Perth. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see that. I've watched a fair bit of reserve grade this year, and I think he has been good. Both him and Bunty have been good. If anything, I would probably say Mav Guy's been the better of the two in this World Cup, but they've both been good. So
Mm.
it'll be interesting to see if he gets a run or not. Probably depends how the game goes, and if there's injuries, I would suggest at number 18. So
I'm
interesting.
just I'm excited for backfence Bunty. So I can't wait to watch Bunty get a run. I hope he goes down to Melbourne and creates absolute carnage. Yes, Joel.
I was just going to say, and Javon Andrews named on the extended
Yeah.
bench as well.
Yes,
So I,
getting closer.
there is, yeah, maybe the opportunity that we're, doing a bit of foxing there, and you never know what might happen. Madden to Hooker, and who knows? We could see what might happen there. What Benji might be thinking.
Do
Yeah,
you think there'll be any late changes? Like, do you think there'll be any, like his name's Skelton, obviously at 19 as
Mm.
well. I mean, I don't know whether he's thinking of changing anything up, maybe with Mason at the back. I'm hoping not with Taruva, unless they send Luke to the back.
Mm.
I don't know if he's Benji's foxing a little bit, because there is quite a mix in that in the 22.
Yeah. Look, it's not really Benji's style, is it? He hasn't really done it
No.
too much. So if you go on that, then maybe not. And probably Benji errs slightly more to the conservative side than the roll the dice sort of side. But hey, I don't mind the late switch to keep the opposition guessing. So yeah, I'm happy to run with a youngster and give him a go somewhere, at least off the bench. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also the Cup boys are playing down in Melbourne before this game on the Saturday, so it's probably a chance for a young bloke like Javon to go down, spend the week with the first grade
Mm.
side, and then go back and play Cup. He has, and probably a reward for great form in the Cup side. Like he's definitely looked a star of the future there. I think his defense needs a bit of work, but he's 19, so in his
Yeah.
first season and playing against men, so that's probably not a criticism, just a matter of time. Um, Look, if he does get a run, it'd be very exciting. But it's good to see him rewarded with a spot in that top squad anyway. So yeah, excited.
Hopefully, if when Javon goes down, he's not rooming with one of the May boys. Hopefully, he gets stuck with someone a bit more experienced and level-headed. But he's only young himself. But yeah, big future ahead of him, Javon Andrews. I think it's a much more balanced side, so I actually do give us a chance. I think we're going to be a bit tighter on that right edge defensively. I hope we are anyway. And I'm actually looking forward to trying to watch the game in amongst Mother's Day festivities. So everyone out there, enjoy your Mother's Day, but hopefully Tigers can come away with a win. It's funny when you look at the head-to-head, and we don't have a great record. We spoke about this last week against any club. Played 39 times, Melbourne and Tigers, 27-12 to Melbourne Storm. And of course, Melbourne's been a powerhouse for so long, and we have not. So I guess you'd expect the results to be swayed that way. And when you look at our last meeting, who could ever forget the 11th of May
Yeah,
last year
64-0.
down Melbourne, 64-0. It was horrific. Josh.
I wonder if that's actually good for us though, coming into this. Like if you're Benji, you're
Mm.
like, guys, we came down here last year and we were embarrassed. Like this was the worst performance of our year. Plenty of you guys were in this side last year when we did come down. Yes, we've got some injuries. Yes, we've got a couple of changes. But actually, for those boys who were, I'm just having a look at the side from that match then. Twal, Seyfarth, Pole, Terrell, Jerome, Taruva. Okay, that's kind of it. And Royce and Sione off the bench. For those guys, it's like actually you came down here and were embarrassed last year. Don't come down here and be embarrassed again. Like you guys need to go out there and give this. Like I'd almost show that game to them and go, righto, how did all you feel at the end of that game? Don't let that happen again against a weekend Storm. Let's go out there and show them. So hopefully that helps.
Equally, don't look at the ladder. For God's
Yeah.
sakes, don't look at the ladder and think it's just going to happen.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, score predictions, Joel. What's your prediction?
The Tigers 19-12.
That's a win. I like it. Josh, Mr. Negative, what's your score prediction? Melbourne 30-20, is it?
Look, Nick, I've got a little more positive if we've discussed this. I'm going to say Melbourne 24, Tigers 22.
Don't
Put
like
in
you.
a great effort.
Don't like you. As my friend, what's your prediction, mate?
Tigers are winning, of course. I'll go 28-24.
Didn't you say you picked Melbourne in your tipping comp?
I have been picking Melbourne. Not
That's a different thing.
Maybe.
Well, if you had have asked Depressed Nick a couple of nights ago, I wasn't picking the Tigers ever again, probably ever. But I am going to pick us for a win. I've already picked us in my tipping comp, and I'm probably going to regret it. I hope I don't, but I'm going to go for a win. Sorry, Craig Bellamy, but I'm going to say Tigers. I'll go 19-18. I'm going to go a close one, field goal. Not sure who's going to kick it. I keep saying I'd love to see Alex Twal kick a field goal, but won't happen. But I'd love to see it.
Well, win, lose or draw, we'll be back on Sunday night, maybe Monday night. We'll see how we go for the next edition of the pod. And don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, to subscribe. We need more subscribers all the time. Nick, sorry, I took over there.
No, go for it, Joel. You're the experienced
That's
one.
all I had to say.
Like listening to it. Yes,
Show.
subscribe, like, share all of our stuff. Watch it as many times as you can to get the numbers up. Helps the algorithm out. But yeah, thank you, boys. It's been fun as always talking about our beloved West Tigers. Hope you all have a lovely Mother's Day. And I hope you all fit in the festivities around the game. I know I might have a lunch that may clash with it, which I'm not too happy about. But my wife did say I can watch it on the phone while I'm at lunch. So
Wow. What an accommodating wife. Yeah.
See, I'm taking my wife for brunch, nice and early in the day. We're going out to do stuff. This is fine. So we'll be done into the afternoon and all
very
good.
smart, man.
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you, boys. It's been fun. Go Tigers, and hopefully a win at 2 p.m. on Sunday.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, boys.
Thanks, boys.
Thanks.